Your Hedvig is so cute. You know, my sister
I
has a
know.
Harry Potter themed Christmas tree every year, and it's draped in their family's house scarves like garland.
Aw.
And
Aw.
Hedvig is on the top of the tree, and then there are golden finches that hang on the boughs.
Aw.
Yeah.
And what are they?
The finches?
No,
Uh,
what house are they?
they are Hufflepuff, but my
Lots
littlest
of cool people I
nephew.
know are Hufflepuff.
Oh,
I have to
really?
say. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, my littlest nephew and I, we are parcel tongues. So I was upset, very much so at first. I was like, how can I be a Slytherin? But it's because of
Wow.
Mm.
my desire to talk to animals, and considering that that's my only audience at the moment, they are getting a lot of attention.
Good. Ooh, he's your audience now. I wonder how long I
Hi,
can keep
Hedvig.
him propped up here. He's my owl of wisdom, the Sirens mascot now.
All right, for all of you who are tuning in right now, welcome to Scirens Show. We are the Sirens. I'm Tamara.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Gia.
I'm Taryn. And this is my random stuffed animal that I found in my parents' bedroom. I'm in their deserted house right now.
Ooh, deserted. Is
Yeah.
it like spooky deserted
Well,
or like calm deserted?
no, like come deserted. I just want to make sure that people don't think that I've sort of now come home and hanging, with my parents, because that would be not social distancing properly. So
Yeah. No, social distancing is social social
Distancing.
distancing. Social distancing is still very much in effect, and I mean, it's so ironic that we started this show. We originally came up with the idea for this show because we were all traveling in different places for work and could never get together in real life anymore. And now it's not safe to get together in real life anymore, so it works.
it does work, except I don't have if people can hear me in and out, I apologize. I left LA without my proper headset. So bad tech, Taryn.
No, it's okay. I mean, one of the
Just
ideas
hit
we
me.
talked about too is that like this is real life. This is where we are and what we are. And there's a lot of remote places that we eventually hope to be back to again, phoning in or zooming in to do this show. So we are showing you guys what's happening, warts and all.
Where were you the last time? Your last shoot, Tamara? Do we call
My
you Tamara on here or TK? Because we call each other by our initials, except for Gia. We call her Gia. But I
That's
guess
true. You can call me Tamara or TK. I'm good with either. So.
okay.
My last shoot, actually, the very last place I was Vancouver, maybe 5 weeks ago, I think, end of February. So, and it was strange too because, news of coronavirus, COVID-19 had broken out, but the panic really hadn't hit the States yet. But I remember going to CVS and trying to, still stock up on sanitizer. I mean, I'm kind of one of those people who I get on the plane and I wipe down everything anyway. I've got the packet of disposable wipes just because I travel so much. And so, but I remember I was like, okay, I've got to be extra careful this time just because, it felt like something was in the air, so to speak. Not literally in the air. It's not
Literally.
airborne. We don't think, I don't know, we're still figuring it out. But I went to CVS and even at that point, this is now, I was prepping for the trip. So early February-ish, there was no hand sanitizer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't say the same thing for when I was in New Orleans. It was everywhere. People were like, what? I actually made one really smart move when I was there. I was about to go to the aquarium on my first weekend there when I had a day off, and I was going to give half a day to myself and then work the rest of the day. And I'm like, I'm going to walk down to the pier and I'm going to go to the aquarium because I love going to an aquarium or, some sort of or a museum, a nature exhibit in a city I'm visiting. And this was actually just a week before they shut down production. I came home, but I looked at all these crowds milling about out the aquarium, and I was like, no, I don't think I need to go in there. And it was just this feeling that I was just like, nope. Because they definitely in the city, unfortunately, weren't taking any precautions. And Mardi Gras had just happened. And so now we know why it has the second largest per capita infection rate in the country. So
Yeah. Scary.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you decided not to head in that way.
Yeah. My parents were very concerned about me when I came back. They were like, you have been somewhere. I'm like, I know. So I just quarantined and, cross my fingers.
Yeah. I don't have an aversion necessarily to large crowds like
Everyone.
that. Oh, we are? Are we here frozen? We back?
No. They are telling me your internet connection is unstable. Sorry.
No
That's
worries
okay.
at
You
all.
haven't frozen yet. So,
Okay.
so Gia, you were saying?
I just totally lost my train of thought.
Aversion to
Well, it's not
large
that
crowd?
yes, I don't have an aversion to large crowds, but now I definitely am feeling much more awareness about that. But like touching your face, for example, like I just did. When Denny took me to go see Paul McCartney last summer, I was trying to get to the bathroom against the tide of the exit, and that salmon feeling. And like that caused me so much anxiety. Like anything could have happened in that moment and nobody would have known anything. Like I feel like it was a police procedural of like somebody getting stabbed in the middle of 100,000 people and nobody knowing it kind of feeling. And like now, like I've just never had an experience where I've physically thought I'm unsafe in a crowd, but now I feel so many levels of that, and I'm not even outside, so I've created my own anxiety over something I can't even do.
I think there's a lot of anxiety. So I went earlier this week to pick up some masks that a costume designer had made, and
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, and so I mean, we literally I drove over there across town. It was the first time I've sort of taken a cross town drive in a while because we've been really strict about the socially distancing thing, and she came out like she was in a mask and she had them in a bag and then she put them in a box and she stepped away from the box and I stepped over and picked them up with gloves on. I mean, the whole thing. But on the way back, I really wanted a chocolate bar. And so I was like, well, maybe like 7-Eleven, right? Because it's a small store. It's not a big grocery store, like it shouldn't be too crowded. Maybe that, and I get there and I pull in and I see that the door is open. So you don't have to touch the door handle. And I like drove right up and I peered inside and there was a line of like 10 people and they were spread apart in the line. They were trying to observe it, but it's not like it's such a big store to begin with. And in the pit of my stomach, I just got scared. And it was just this this reaction that, I've been talking with other friends about, like, when are we going to feel safe going to sporting events again? When are we going to feel safe going to the theater again? When is that going to happen? And if I had that reaction to going into 7-Eleven, it was the first time I'd really had that sort of deep, visceral reaction to it, to crowds.
That's weird. I had the first time I had that reaction was about a week ago. So in real time, let's say a month ago, was when the first new research had come out of how airborne the virus could be and how it could linger outdoors for 30 minutes after somebody has coughed or passed. And I am the one who walks our dog every day for extended periods of time. And I live in an area in LA. You guys know that, it's not hugely dense, but there's definitely a lot of foot traffic out there now with like people walking their kids and walking their dogs, and everybody's being really conscientious about keeping the social distancing. But we weren't all wearing masks at that time because it hadn't been announced that we should be wearing masks outside. But it was that first Monday after like the new research had come out, and I literally had this moment of actual panic where my body started seizing and I started hyperventilating a little bit, where I was like, every day I've been doing this for like an hour at a time with this dog who needs a lot of walking. Like I could be putting myself at risk and other people can be at risk. And it was just definitely that physiological nervous system reaction that, you had to literally override through breathing or whatever to be like, nope, you just do what you're doing and you can't overthink it. But it's definitely a physiological reaction.
Well, given all of this that's going on, I say that we should pivot to what has been keeping us sane and non-anxious. I mean, the good thing about this time is that it's allowed the three of us to have a little bit more space and breathing room to read the stuff we love to read, and dive into the stuff that we love to dive into. So as usual, we have each brought an article to share with you all, something that's caught our attention. And we kind of have a theme going this week, right?
Yeah.
You do.
We have a women in STEM theme this week, which of course we're so passionate about, even if my article is kind of virus related. It's virus related, but we think it's important to share.
Why don't you start, Tio?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold please for sharing a screen.
We like to share our screens. We like to share our screens. It's always a bit of a mystery how we share our screens.
All right, my friends. So I have my little cheat sheet over here so that we don't have to have our share screen up for as long. And now, Siri, I don't want you to help me. I want you to open up my iPad. I'm trying. Maybe the owl should just take my spot today. So apparently my internet connection is unstable again. This is a New York Times article. It is written by Alicia Haridasani Gupta for the New York Times in the In Her Words section. And it's called, Does COVID-19 Hit Women and Men Differently? The U.S. is not keeping track. Now, this is a really interesting article because apparently in the US, the CDC nor the larger publications are sharing any sort of gender data when it comes to how the virus is affecting men versus women. Now, there are some unpeer-reviewed research that's coming out of Italy, China, and South Korea that the virus is impacting men more, that the death rates for males are higher. And one of the reasons I found this article interesting, and I know we all would too, is because there's been a lot of pieces that harken back to how females have been way underrepresented in research studies. So, and just to go back, first, the White House's initial 12-person corona task force was entirely male. So I just had such a huge issue with that. Yay! But in sort of digging into this article, so we can just sort of scroll through it for a second. So right here, it says, we can confidently say from the data from many countries that being male is a risk factor. And that kind of information matters because men and women are likely to have fundamentally different reactions to virus, vaccines, and treatment.
Wow.
Now, something that I found interesting was, and we'll include this in the show notes, is that there was a non-coronavirus study from the NIH that said the intensity and prevalence of viral infections are typically higher in males, whereas disease outcome can be worse for females. Females mount higher innate and adaptive immune responses than males, which can result in faster clearance of viruses, but also contributes to increased development of immunopathology. So this made me think of how women traditionally, or not traditionally, recently have been developing higher autoimmune issues compared to men. And so who knows what the actual science behind women mounting sort of higher immune responses, but then being hit by the diseases harder in the long run. Maybe it's just because we procreate and we need to be able to attack viruses and bacteria more effectively if we're pregnant and we're defending the immune system of the fetus as well. But I think that this is going to be something that's important in moving towards a vaccine. Of how does it, so there was this other article that I'll share there too, that it was a Quartz article, QZ.com, Quartz article that showed in the past 25 years, it has gotten women are much more represented in health trials, even though it's skewed where things like cardiovascular issues don't have as many women, where neurodegenerative studies have much more women. So it's not reflective of the actual gender balance in real world patients. So I thought that was an interesting sociological study of men don't want to get tested for Alzheimer's or dementia. They're more sensitive to those topics. And women's cardiovascular for heart attacks, they've shown that they don't, as I think we've discussed this before, they don't have the same acute pain that men do during a heart attack. It's more of it feels like indigestion. It's sort of a different sort of experience.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Completely different symptomatic appearance. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, you mentioned H1N1. So I was pregnant during H1N1. For those who don't know, I have a daughter. She's a fourth grader. And that was scary. And, it was a very big deal. Like, you know, do we take the vaccine? Do we not take the vaccine? Not because I don't believe in vaccines. I'm very, very pro-vaccinating. But, when you're pregnant, there's that thing of you're not supposed to be putting all this foreign stuff into your body. And, ultimately, like, it was deemed the right thing to do, and I did, and I'm so glad, and I did not get sick. But it was definitely a scary moment because it was the unknown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that was really interesting too, that it made me think of, like, going back to the reasons why doctors back in the 80s and 90s said women weren't included in research groups, was because they just considered them smaller men. And also they were more complex and difficult to study because of the hormone cycle. Mm-hmm. And I listened to a podcast recently with Elisa Vitti, I think her name is, and she does a lot of research on this sort of terminology she's created called the infradian rhythm, which is it's not just and maybe I'll bring her actual podcast in as a different article at a different time, but it goes into the rhythm that the female has when she is actually fertile. So from the age of, let's say, 14 to menopause, say early 50s, she has a separate rhythm on top of the circadian rhythm that affects how she processes food, how her energy levels are, where it basically takes into account the 4 different stages of our cycle, where it's like our follicular cycle. You have your menstrual cycle, and then you have your follicular cycle, and then you have another, and then there's 4 of them. And at different stages, your hormone levels are all at different levels, and you need different nutrients. Your cortisol levels adjust differently. I started eating along the lines of how she suggests to eat for your body on a 4-cycle month.
Did it make a difference?
To me. You need to do it for such a long time to really see a difference. But I'm on my cycle right now where I've been craving kale, and I looked at her thing. It's like, eat kale during this time. And I was like, oh, okay, my body knows that.
Yeah, that's good.
Whoever craves kale.
Yes, yeah, I know my cycle is like, my cycle is like, eat healthfully for a little while. Then there's the part of the cycle where I just want chocolate chip cookies. And then, so I know that rhythm really well.
Right.
By the way, Gia, I feel like there's a song in this rhythm that you need to write.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it has 4 stanzas for sure. Yeah, I'm already sensing this. I like this idea very much. This is a good challenge.
She's got rhythm. She's got cycles.
Well, I think that one of the reasons, of course, that, one of the reasons that traditionally women were not included in so many clinical trials was because the trials were being run by men. And part of the change that we hope to see in that is that as more and more women are in charge of these, they're including their own because they do realize there are differences there. So, Gia, you have brought in a piece that focuses on women in STEM, yeah?
Absolutely. So let me share this from Science Magazine here. This is called Rising Up, and it is a list of 9 trailblazing female scientists. It's definitely worth your visiting this particular piece written by Emily Peterson, because the portraits themselves are just gorgeous. So I'll just scroll through very briefly. I'm not going to read all the stories, but I'll tell you who the women are and what their field is. So what's interesting is this woman down here on the bottom left. She is a generational female scientist. Her grandmother graduated top of her class at Catholic University in 1939 in chemistry, but of course could not get a job because she was a woman. And
wait, 1939 is when she graduated?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Isn't that crazy? So anyway, her daughter now is an anthropologist. Granddaughter rather is an anthropologist, which is super interesting. So these go in order of the 9 portraits here. So we will start with Andrea Dutton, who is at University of Wisconsin at Madison. She is a geologist. This is Jennifer Eberhardt, and she studies unconscious psychological biases at Stanford University. And speaking of separating out gender data, race data, there's a huge article that came out recently about how poorly Black Americans are faring in the coronavirus epidemic because they generally live in higher particulate air zones because they're closer to mining and other industrial things, and so they are particularly at risk now because of their respiratory vulnerabilities. So of course her work is super important.
Did you just see that there were 70% of the fatalities in Louisiana were African Americans when they only they make up 30% of the population? So yeah, there's 2 new studies that just came out on that.
Wow. Yeah. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. Well, this is Penny Chisholm. She's a biologist in the civil engineering department at MIT. She's been there for 43 years. Talk about a trailblazer. I love this picture because I've sat on this Albert Einstein right here. This is
I've seen that picture of you. I remember that.
Yeah. This is at the National Academies of Science in Washington, D.C. And this is Marcia McNutt. She's a geophysicist, rather, and she oversees the U.S. Geological Survey's response. She did when Deepwater Horizon spilled. This was her job. She was the lady in charge of trying to not destroy the ocean.
Cool.
This is, I'm going to say, I'm so sorry. I have an unpronounceable last name, so I apologize to this woman in advance. Gao Kai-Xia. She's at the Chinese Academy of Sciences Institute of Genetics and Developmental Biology, and she's a cell biologist there. Isn't that a cool picture, too?
I love that picture.
Yeah.
I love the joy from her, too. She looks so...
Look at that face. She's just so
I know.
happy.
She's just like, awesome. Right, like she's in hopes of feeding China's billions. I mean, she has such an incredibly integral job to the future of that country.
Oh yeah, and if you haven't all watched One Child Nation on Amazon, and I think it's now playing on PBS, to understand like what lengths they went to in their fears of feeding their country is horrifying. So I mean, she's literally a life or death kind of person. Talk about an essential worker. This is Danielle Bassett. Isn't this a super cool portrait with this brain?
Love that.
She originally was a physicist, and now she runs a lab at University of Pennsylvania that studies neuroscience, everything from personality to psychiatric disorders, which is pretty cool. And this is Nancy Moran. She's at UT Austin, and I forget what she's. Scroll down. Oh, she studies deep symbiotic relationships between insects and microbes.
Oh, wow.
And I wonder
evolutionary biologist.
Yeah, do you think these are beehives?
It would not surprise me. I'd be curious. If anyone watching knows what those are, we would love to know. So please let us know.
Yes.
Yeah,
oh, and by the way,
on the very bottom, like the bottom white crate, it says, if I could read more.
Oh, it does say
project.
Bee Microbiome Project. You're right. Moran Lab.
Oh, okay.
Good eye, T. Love it.
Thanks.
Each of these also has links to read more about these women, so it'll take you down a rabbit hole here. This is Beth Stevens. She's at Harvard Medical School and Boston Children's Hospital, and she does work on nerve cell connections, which is pretty awesome too. And this is the granddaughter of the woman who graduated in 1939. This is Christina Warrener, and she's an anthropologist who applies DNA analysis to study ancient human cultures. So she's looking backwards. I know that at one point I don't know if we didn't talk about it on the show, but we had passed back and forth the chewing gum article. Remember, like the
yes,
yeah. Maybe we'll bring it back
up again. That was in one of our test episodes.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway,
the DNA, the microbiome of that ancient fossil of that woman is a young girl. They could see what she had eaten as well as the viruses that existed in her.
And it was the whole chewing gum piece of it, if I'm remembering correctly, and I may not be, was that there was basically like a sap-like substance, which they seemed to be using almost like a chewing gum, right?
It was a bark that they broke down and chewed, and it turned into this sticky substance, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can imagine that Christina Warrener is doing that kind of work and saying like, oh, well, she ate pemmican and she ate a mix of berries and cocaine leaves or whatever. I don't know. I just always, whenever I hear about that, it always is like pertains to Mesoamerica. And they're like, we found this body. She was sacrificed and wrapped in a thing. Turns out she was high on coca leaves. Well, I'm glad they did that before they threw her off a cliff. That's good.
Oh my God.
my God, your sense of humor today is hilarious.
I want to like sit down and have lunch, I want to sit down and have lunch with every single one of these women.
I know.
Can we arrange a multi-cam Zoom?
You know, anything is possible these days, so we'll
As
see.
long as we have bandwidth and a camera.
Yeah, still working on the bandwidth stuff. We are literally like scheduling Zoom calls in the house right now between myself, my husband, and my daughter because we all have needs.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, what did you do for us today, Tamara?
So today let me go to share my screen. Share screen. Okay, so today I also found a story about a woman in STEM who sadly is no longer with us. Margaret Burbage is an astronomer, and can you all see my screen? Are you good? Okay, so she recently passed away at the age of 100.
That's so cool.
And there are so many fascinating things about her. So first of all, one of her nicknames, as you can see right here, Lady Stardust. Hold on, I'm going to get rid of that very annoying thing. Okay, Lady Stardust. How awesome is that? And so she worked on instruments for the Hubble Space Telescope and has worked in a whole variety of places. And she was most famous for her work in establishing how stars produce increasingly heavy elements and distribute them throughout the universe. So she was one of the authors of a 100-page paper that was crucial in looking at the reactions that take place within stars. So, and a colleague actually later won the Nobel for part of their research. So that's pretty amazing. So that's a little bit of what she did. She also worked on quasars, which are the brightest objects that we can see in the sky. And so I'm going to go to something. I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to try a little Zoom experiment here. But here's a little bit of an explanation of what a quasar is. And Gia and Taryn, I didn't know he was in this when I first started just looking for like a good video to explain to everybody what a quasar is. But I think you'll recognize the person who kicks this off. All right, let's see if this works. If it doesn't, I'll switch out of it real quickly.
If you can imagine, when a galaxy is very young and still forming, there's a supermassive black hole forming at the core, and the gas is still falling into it and still forming the galaxy.
Anywho, so, but I will put a link to this on the notes. That was our friend Phil, who is Bad Astronomer on Twitter, and you should follow him. But this is a video from Discovery UK, which goes over the basics of what quasars are, if you all are curious. And also just a quick shout out, this original piece that I found on Margaret is by, I don't know if it's Megan Bartels on space.com. And the nice thing about this piece is that it has a lot of links to other places where if you're curious about some of the things that she did or some of the terms that are in here, you can just kind of you can click over. You can click the link and it'll take you into more about her work and what she did. Anyway, she grew up in the UK. She worked in her dad's chemistry lab. And I love this too. When she saw a spiral galaxy for the first time, she wrote, "I felt it was almost sinful to be enjoying astronomy so much. Now it was my job and the source of my livelihood." So
Did you
can
see
look at
up
that.
there how she pretended to be her husband to sneak into a...
Yeah, that's what I was going to next. Yeah. So,
oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh, no, I love that you know that. So
I saw it too, and I was like, oh my God, I hope we get to talk about that.
yeah. No, so another, I'm going to stop my share right now. Or actually, wait, before I do, I'm just going to show you all one other thing. There is this piece on theconversation.com, which is where that quote just came from, where they actually have some stuff from the BBC archive right here. It's a Twitter post that they've embedded, and you can play it and you can hear her speak. Since we can't really hear the audio so clearly through the Zoom, I'm not going to put it up, but of course we'll put it on the notes in case. And she talks, I think this piece is about 10 minutes long, and it's great to hear her talk about her research and what she does. And she's got, that wonderful quality that, when you talked in the 1950s, that sort of, yeah. So anyway, you can take a listen if you want. We'll put it in the notes. But what Gia and Taryn were just referring to is that when she first wanted to gain access to the Hubble, they wouldn't let her go because she was a woman. So she pretended to be her husband's research assistant.
Unbelievable.
Still makes me crazy,
Yeah.
but
We stand on the shoulders of giants. We have to.
And another interesting thing about her too is that later on when she did, I forget the name of the exact award, but she was recognized for being a woman in astronomy and astrophysics, and she actually turned it down because she said that she didn't believe that awards and recognition should be gendered. She should just be whether it's positive or negative. She didn't think she should be shut out because she was a woman, and she didn't think that she should get special recognition because she was a woman. She should just be able to do what she loved, and the work should stand on its own. And after 100 years of a beautiful life, I'm glad that she is being recognized and seen.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm going to have to also post the recording of Stardust that I have on the Einstein's Girl. I can't even say his name. Einstein's Girl website. Since that Hoagie Carmichael song is Stardust, we'll dedicate it to Our Lady Stardust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things you are all seeing and watching, let's end today with a real quick, what have you either learned this week that you're excited about, or what are you watching, something to recommend, listening to, learning, all that.
Taryn, you go first.
I'm watching Devs. It's on FX, Hulu and FX. I'm not sure how that whole cross-pollination is working, but it's a limited sci-fi tech series that is written and directed by Alex Garland, who did Annihilation, which a movie I really loved that was based on a book, a sci-fi book. He also did The Beach, and he did Ex Machina.
Ex Machina, yeah.
So I highly recommend it. It dives into really interesting quantum theory, grand unified theories. It doesn't pull its punches when it comes to science. The phrases pilot wave theory, de Broglie-Bohm, and Everett's multi-world theory were uttered in a mere 2 minutes, and I may have been doing a happy dance.
I was going to say, this sounds like it has your name written all over it.
It's literally my show. And I'm like, why aren't I writing on it?
Wait, but just to be clear, it's a narrative show. It's not a documentary.
It's a narrative show. Yeah, it's a sci-fi thriller show that just has a lot of cool, legit science in it. So I highly recommend it, and has a very interesting, diverse cast too, which is good.
On the total other side of the spectrum, I got a subscription to Broadway HD, which you can get you can get a trial for a free week. But it's a channel that shows theater productions that have been taped. And some of them have been shot specifically because they knew they were going to be doing it. And then some of them are on there because, right now there are so many theatrical productions that had to close, but yet they had maybe taped some rehearsals or a final dress purely for archival purposes, yet some of them are actually good enough to be shown to the public just to give subscribers and ticket holders a glimpse of what they lost, since there's no guarantee that any of the stuff can be remounted. So we watched a show called Holiday Inn. It's a musical that The Roundabout did in 2016. And, you can tell, like, it's not shot like a movie in the sense that you're in a theater, you see shots of the audience, but yet they've shot it with a ton of close-ups and things like that. So it's this sort of bizarre live hybrid experience. And it's a show based on a movie that starred Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire. Unfortunately, the movie has a blackface scene that is not so great.
Ooh.
Yeah, it has some amazing tap and stuff like that as well. But in this updated version, which is based on the movie, yet different, that has been eliminated, I'm very happy to say. And it's just, there's amazing tap numbers and some really fun songs. It's a good old-fashioned musical about, a Broadway hoofer who decides to leave the scene and goes and buys a farm, and he meets the local girl. But the farm's in disarray, and oh no, how are they going to pay the bills? They decide to put on a show. And he gets all of his friends from New York to come up to the farm on their holidays, because that is when they are off from doing their shows. So they put on these shows every holiday. So it goes through each holiday, and there's a great big musical number for it. And of course, there's a romantic rival and things like that. And it's just super fun and feel good. And we watched it as a family. It was totally appropriate. So that's what I've been watching.
That's adorable. I have been vacillating between two extremes. I'm enjoying the dystopian nature of The Plot Against America on HBO because all of the ranting and ravings against the, imagined Lindbergh presidency are pretty much in line with my current feelings about the world. And so it feels cathartic in that sense to have other people saying like, no, we hear it too. And it's just sounds just as bananas to us as it does to you. But then I've been tempering that with Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell from Adult Swim, which is 12
Quite a
minutes
range.
of pure bliss. It is what would happen if you were condemned to hell, and hell is literally just the worst office job ever, and it's the combination thereof of like having Satan as the worst boss ever in a really bad office job that's full of existential ennui, but it also takes place in hell in this super heightened comedic land. It's brilliant. Yeah.
That's new to me, so I'm going to check that out because that sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
But tell people what the Plot Against America, what that's based on.
Oh, that is on the Philip K. Dick novel of the same title, The Plot Against America. Great
Wait,
read.
PK Dick or Philip Roth?
Oh,
Yeah,
what did I?
Yeah.
Wait, which one did I say? I meant Philip K. Dick, which is obviously what I did. I say Philip Roth? Oh,
No,
man.
you said
No,
Philip
you
K.
said-
Dick.
Oh,
But
okay.
it is Philip Roth. It's funny
Philip
that you
Roth.
bring up.
Oh, man.
It's funny that you bring up Philip K. Dick though, because there are so many amazing sci-fi movies that are
And
based on.
shows.
Yeah, it shows that are based on his work. And we didn't watch a sci-fi version last night, but several of them star Arnold Schwarzenegger. And last night here we actually watched Kindergarten Cop.
Oh my God. It's not a tumor. It's just my whole childhood encapsulated right in that.
It's not a tumor.
No, what about you're a firefighter? I'm a princess. You're a firefighter. Okay. That's my favorite scene. I love that movie so much. Penelope Ann Miller was fantastic in that movie too.
Yeah, she really
As the
was.
teacher. That's a great
All right.
movie.
All right,
Okay,
we're
we
going to
need
leave
to
you all
go.
on that note. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, I love the owl. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Please, if there's stuff that we've talked about, you're curious about, check out the notes because we've got a lot of great links there for you. And if there are articles or podcasts or things that you want to send out to a larger audience that we can feature on here, let us know what you're watching. Put a link in the notes, or if there's a topic you're curious about, let us know. And follow Sirens. Where can they follow us, ladies?
At Scirens. Well, jinx. What does that mean in quarantine when you jinx each other?
On Zoom, I think it means real life.
All right, so we are at Sirens on Twitter, at Sirens Official on Instagram, /Sirens on YouTube. If this is where you're catching us, we're also on IGTV.
Facebook is /Sirens as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've made it very hard to find us, as you could tell. All right, thanks everyone. Till next time.
Stay curious.
We'll see you soon.
Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.
Ba-ba-doo.